Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are
above replacement radio.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio. We're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. It's been a busy yet also not very busy week in baseball. There was kind of one big thing that happened, but it was the big thing that happened.
Yes, indeed. $700 million were spent on one player. Crazy thing. I think what's funny about all this is, we figured this, we knew this guy was on the market. We knew Shohei Ohtani was, we knew who the favorites were to land Shohei Ohtani. He went exactly to that team, but we're still shocked at the news because of the number that came out.
Not only the number, but also just the process that ultimately culminated with him going to the Dodgers. The way that I would describe Shohei Ohtani's free agency was, it was the most predictable outcome in the least predictable way. Whether it be the dollar value, because $700 million is just an impossible number to comprehend. And not only that, but everything that happened beforehand with all the speculation and the rumored other teams that were maybe in, and the craziness that came out of his secrecy. It all was just such a wild thing, but ultimately we got the most predictable outcome.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think it almost makes me feel like someone was on payroll to make this a little more interesting than it was. Not saying it was, but it almost feels like that. Like, he went to the Dodgers, but throw a little wrench in the mix. We're gonna have 3,000 people tracking a random private jet from Anaheim to Toronto. We're just gonna have that for a day. It's gonna spice up the baseball world, have everybody talking. MLB trade rumors, and John Morosi are gonna report that he's going to the Blue Jays. Or John Morosi didn't report he's going to the Blue Jays,
No.
but he reported that he was going to
there was
Toronto.
the one guy from DodgersNation.com or whatever that is a BBWAA writer that reported he was signing with the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
Which caused MLB trade rumors to write that he was reportedly going to the Blue Jays.
That is true. I guess anytime you say reportedly,
MLB trade rumors really put the the no fault in there.
Yes, indeed. So yeah, it did throw a whole wrench in the mix, but ultimately he's with the Dodgers. The Dodgers now have Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Shohei Ohtani. Just what are your overall, what are some of the first takeaways that you take away from the Shohei Ohtani deal?
It's just such an impossible thing to comprehend. When Shohei Ohtani first was getting posted by the NPB and coming over to America, there was a lot of talk about how he was going to perform in America, and also maybe what that would look like down the road in free agency. Because I think even the best possible hypotheticals that people were imagining were, what if he's an above average hitter and an above average pitcher? What does that look like in free agency? And maybe the number started with a 3, maybe it started with a 4, but no one could have predicted. And people could have predicted, but I don't think anyone really truly saw the outcome of, no, there's going to be a 3-year stretch heading into his free agency where he is a top 5 hitter and a top 5 pitcher in the league. And also, even just as a position player, having seasons unlike any other, just as a pitcher, having seasons unlike any other, and doing it all at the same time. And even in 2021 and 22 through 23, we were talking, oh my gosh, what is this contract going to look like? Is it going to start with a 4? Is it going to start with a 5? What if it even starts with a 6? And then, there was the speculation of maybe he lost a couple $100 million after the injury. And all of us were lowballing him the entire time because he got $700 million, which is just, again, an impossible number to comprehend. This is a contract that will stand, I think, for the majority of the rest of our lifetimes, at the very least, as the most lucrative in baseball history.
Yeah, and I think this is great for baseball. It's great for the players. And I don't think Shohei Ohtani was necessarily doing this for the players, but ultimately it's gonna be of service to them because the fact that a guy is making $70 million a year, I think it's gonna make players have a higher standard for themselves when they go out onto free agency. And also I think the past couple of years have been good for the players. Like Aaron Judge also got $40 million a year last year. So I think it's just been a successful free agency for the players in general the past couple of years. With Judge and Ohtani being both guys who bet on themselves and got rewarded in the free agent market. And yeah, like this is definitely big. I think it also I think this is like the Dodgers are doing something a little bit good for baseball because it makes it might make other teams look bad because they have a guy who they're paying $700 million, a guy who they're paying $365 million in Mookie Betts, and a guy they're paying $162 million in Freddie Freeman. And they're gonna be fine. They're gonna be competitive. And they're probably gonna spend more this offseason. So, I think it might put a little bit more pressure on other teams to, move the needle come, the next free agency cycles and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I think this Dodgers number really has a lot of fan bases questioning, are you sure we couldn't do that if they have all those guys and also putting Shohei Ohtani on top of it? Because this is a contract that's going to pay itself off, like probably within the first half of it. I would even go as far as to say because Shohei Ohtani is a global brand. He's a guy with more reach than anyone we've ever seen throughout the sport of baseball. He has all of Japan behind him, and he has all of really the entire world behind him because, I mean, he's the most popular baseball player probably in America. He's absolutely the most popular baseball player in Japan, and he's probably up there everywhere else in the world, even in many of the Latin American countries. So it's a guy again that we've never seen have this much of a global impact in terms of just entire fan base. He's going to he's going to get a lot of partnerships in LA, whether it be, there's something related to Japan, something related to LA. He's going to bring in a lot of sponsors. He's going to increase ticket prices. He's going to increase jersey sales. And he's going to pay that contract off himself, especially in a big market like LA. And going back to your point, Chris, about how this is going to help other players, this is setting a benchmark for everybody. Right? If you're Juan Soto and you're hitting free agency next year as a 26-year-old, and you see yourself putting the same up, putting up the same offensive value as Shohei Ohtani, that sets the benchmark at 35 million a year at least, because theoretically you're doing half of Shohei's workload. Theoretically, you get half of that in average annual value. And again, on the other side of the spectrum, right? If you're a pitcher, if you're Corbin Burns, for example, going into free agency next year, and you put yourself up with Shohei Ohtani as a pitcher, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. It just makes another standard because of how big that gap is between Ohtani's contract and Mike Trout's contract, which was formerly the biggest in baseball history, which the difference between those two contracts is almost $300 million. So eventually at some point, I don't know when, that gap is probably going to be eventually closed. And, because like thinking back to the early 2000s when Alex Rodriguez got, I think it was like a $275 million contract or a $250 million contract. It was one of the two. Like that was by and large the biggest. And eventually other teams caught up and started signing their guys to $200 million deals. And then eventually 300 and 400. And now eventually 20 years later, we have a $700 million contract. But, obviously Ohtani's one of a kind. Another guy won't be signed for $700 million until the American dollar is way, way less valuable.
Yes.
Inflation is going to have to play a factor.
Yeah, the equivalent of eventually like the equivalent of like I don't know, like Kyle Seager is going to be making $700 million, but that's not going to be for a very long time.
Yes, exactly. But nonetheless, it is is great for everybody involved. Great for the players, and I'm hoping that fan bases will look at sort of their owners and be like, okay, why is it that only like 3 teams can compete for this guy? Because I let's level the playing field, and not by the players, not on sacrifice of the players, but on sacrifice of the owners.
I was gonna say, Dick Monfort called up Rod Manfred whining to him on the phone on
Yes.
Saturday. Like,
Yes.
that happened.
Yeah, exactly. You there's gonna be there's gonna be there's probably gonna be teams like within the division, or maybe not even within the division, but it's like, hey, we're not the Dodgers. We build from the ground up, or like blah blah blah, something like that. Some stupid quote like that.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like the Dodgers have this legacy of not getting it done when it matters and always losing in the postseason. You can't even like really put it on the front office at this point because they're doing literally everything they can. Of course, yeah, why didn't Andrew Friedman account for Mookie Betts going for 0-21 in the over 21 of the play, 1 for 19? Like, at this point, the Dodgers front office is doing literally everything they can to produce a winner. And like you gotta admire it, whether it's unfair or not for the game. Like, you gotta appreciate like a team that is like, yeah, money's not real, we want a World Series, doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It's a team that's consistently at the bare minimum like a top 10 farm system also.
Yep.
Well, spending 250 million plus on their team and making pretty smart investments. Like we mentioned, the 3 biggest contracts they have, they're all great. They're all
Hmm.
they're all arguably the best at their respective positions, wherever you put Ohtani in that mix, is because he plays multiple. Obviously, like, he's the best player in the game when he's doing both. Mookie Betts is a top 2 right fielder with Aaron Judge, or top 3 with Ronald Acuna Jr. involved in there. And then Freddie Freeman is definitely the best first baseman in the game. So like, it's not like they're just throwing money at anybody. They're making smart investments as well, which teams can also obviously learn from.
Yeah, I mean, every single one of those contracts. I mean, I guess we won't know Otani's for a while, but Betts and Freeman's contracts look better and better every year.
Oh yeah, the Betts deal, it's one of the best out there. Like,
Hmm.
the fact that he's only getting $30 million a year, it was a sign of the times. It was he signed it during the COVID lockdown, so I think part of that had to do with it. I think if he went on the open market in a time that wasn't the pandemic, I think he could have gotten 400, upwards near $500 million. So Dodgers definitely took advantage of that, but they did take advantage, and they're reaping the benefits of it by having a guy who finished runner up in MVP last year, and having Freddie Freeman, who finished top 5, yeah, or
Top
top 3,
three, yeah,
yeah, top 3.
yeah, he finished third. Yeah, I mean, and Shohei Ohtani is going to, I mean, we're finally going to see him in a postseason. 99% chance, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it
I
goes
sure hope so.
if it goes like the last
11
10,
years,
yeah,
12
11 years
years,
have gone.
yeah.
If it goes how the past 11 years have gone for the Dodgers, then yeah, if they don't make it, it's probably Ohtani's fault,
Yeah.
because he doesn't care about winning typically. I think
Hmm.
that's why the Angels never got to the playoffs. But
Can
yeah, no,
we?
it'll
Yeah.
be a spectacle.
Can we talk about the way that this whole thing was covered? Because, oh man, was it tough to watch?
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah, I mean, so Bob Nightingale uh wrote a column for USA Today, being like this free agency brought out the worst in baseball journalists, and like we should all be embarrassed with ourselves. And I read through it, and there were certain points that I was kind of waiting for him to hit on, and he did. Like, he wrote a very good, insightful article, and I think it's easy for someone like Bob Nightingale to say this because he's one of the inner circle well-known, baseball journalist. He's been in the game for a long time, so obviously it means more coming from him than say like someone who's only been in the game for 5 or less years. It sounds very disingenuous, but Shohei Ohtani asked to keep his free agency as secretive as possible. He didn't want people leaking where he was going or who he was meeting with, and there was a lot of speculation with Dave Roberts making some comments here and there, which ultimately didn't matter. And honestly, like even if he didn't sign with the Dodgers, I don't think a lot of real people would have been like, "Oh, well, Dave Roberts was the only reason he didn't go to the Dodgers." Like, I don't think it was, all he said was, "I will hold it against you." I don't think it was going to be, "You're out," right? Like, there's a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But oh man, it brought the takes out of people. Buster Olney had a column talking about like this is bad for baseball. We should be able to, we should be making this big spectacle of it. A lot of people were comparing it to the LeBron James free agency from when he went to Miami, and I don't know. It was just so tired to keep watching day after day during this entire process.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, and yeah, I imagine maybe Shohei Ohtani learned about how LeBron was viewed after the decision and probably figured, oh yeah, that's probably a bad idea. It's not good for my legacy because LeBron, from what I recall, LeBron was not celebrated for having such a
No.
such a thing like that. Because and I mean he's switched teams twice after that and has not done that. So, nonetheless, yeah, and whatever, like it kind of just goes into part of a little bit of a issue in like I don't know if it's journalism or sports journalism particularly, and we're two people that are sort of entering the field right now. But feeling like you're owed people's times or athletes' times or athletes' word, like feeling like you're owed, that's something I have a bit of a problem with. Like, I know personally, like just doing my, lower level entry level stuff. I always try to ask politely for interviews, and I've never really been like rejected, but if I am rejected, it's like, yeah, perfectly understandable. I understand if you don't want your words out there, on a platform because, it's not your platform that you're putting it out on. It's ours. So like feeling like, oh, this needs to be a big media thing. This needs to benefit me. I don't know. It just comes off kind of selfish.
Yeah, I mean, Shohei was, making a life-altering decision, right? Like
Yeah.
a life-altering decision that almost no one has the privilege of being able to make. Uh, and yeah, I mean, it's already a lot to deal with individually, and I'm sure having other people ask about it as much as possible is also stressful. Like you and I just graduated college, Chris, so of course we got the "so what are you doing after college" question all the time, and it's like no one wants to hear that question, and obviously the two aren't one to one, but the feeling that you get hearing that question, or even like if you're a senior in high school hearing the "so what are you going to do after high school, where are you going to college, are you going to college" questions, like it's a lot. And that's obviously another level, and of course it is people's actual jobs, but there are still ways to do journalism uh without being super invasive like that, especially when a boundary was set. And not only that, but you know with there's obviously so much happening behind the scenes now that now that the deal's over. Now you get to do all the digging you want. Like you get to go to these teams and be like, hey, so like, did you meet with him? Like, well, what was said? How did you go about it? How did you ensure that it was not going to get out there? What did you offer? Like, there's still a lot of digging to be done, and the fact that he made it so secretive allows for more stories to be told.
Yeah, that is a good point. Like there's all that information is still like it's not like
Mhm.
it's all gonna disappear now into the
I mean, how
abyss.
many headlines are going to come out in the next 1 to 5 years from non-Dodgers teams beat writers being like, this team made an offer, this team met with him. Here's what happened in the meeting between Shohei Ohtani and the Blue Jays, the Cubs, the Giants, the Red Sox, the Yankees, right? Like those headlines are going to exist a lot over the last 5 years, and we're going to hear about over about like several different scenarios of he could have gone here if this meeting went like that. Maybe he goes here, he takes this money, and all gonna be something that's gonna unfold in the next few years.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you know, just looking back on it, you look at the previous off season, and off seasons before that, people have just gotten stuff wrong, and that didn't change with the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes either. MLB trade rumors sort of got something wrong with Shohei Ohtani, and I don't know how much.
And I don't know if they got it wrong. They just went off of someone else's report
Yeah,
and didn't claim for it to be their own. But someone did get stuff wrong.
someone did get stuff wrong, and like last year, John Heyman got Aaron Judge wrong, or Arson Judge wrong.
Yeah.
He did not appear to be heading to the Giants. Like, and I don't know how much of an effect that has on the athlete. It might just make enemies that you never intended to make because you didn't go to the team that you were never going to go to. So I understand why Ohtani wants to make sure things are kept secret so that things are as accurate as possible and he's never misrepresented.
Yeah. Can we talk about these, like, the conspiracy theories that have come out of all of it? I don't know how much you've seen, but like there's a lot of speculation online. So if you don't already know, the day before Shohei Ohtani signed on Friday, there was a rumor that he was going to Toronto to meet with the Blue Jays. And Chris mentioned earlier the flight that people were tracking going from Anaheim to Toronto, which ended up not being him, right? John Morosi tweeted like he is en route to Toronto. The guy from Dodgers Nation said he's choosing the Blue Jays, and it turned out that the guy on that flight was like one of the Shark Tank like judges. I don't remember the guy's name, but it was like a Canadian businessman who was actually going from Hollywood to Toronto, and apparently this is all speculation. I'm not gonna act like I know anything, but from what I remember hearing, he's like somehow involved with Shohei Ohtani's agency. So like that flight was like theoretically put out like as a red herring, to scare the Dodgers and make them offer more money.
Um, yeah, maybe. Who knows?
Regardless, my take on that is like you can view it as scummy, but like that's an agent doing agent's work, right? Because this is a very special occasion if you're an agent to go get the biggest sports contract of all time. And you know what? That's what if that's what it took. If that's real, I'm not going to say it's real because I won't believe it until it somehow turns out to be so. That's still agent work.
Yeah, it's playing the game for sure. You're dealing with big money there, so why not? I'm sure it's not the shadiest thing that an agent has done or anything. Funny thing about Robert Herjavec, the Shark Tank host that was going to Toronto, he has dated an alumni of Nathan Hale Ray High School, which is the high school I went to in East Haddam, Connecticut. Has about 350 students that go there per year. So, the fact that he found an alum, pretty wild. Because
cool.
Now, granted that she did make it out of East Haddam, she went to Hollywood for acting, so that's most of the reason why. But very funny. But anyway, back to baseball.
Yeah.
And I mean, what are the other angles to to approach with this thing, because it was a whole spectacle.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we should just talk about like kind of what this means for Shohei Ohtani in general. I mean, we talked about how he'll ideally go to the playoffs next year, but like, there will be more eyes on him naturally, because he's going to be, in a bigger market, even though he's kind of in the same market, right? But like, he's gonna have more eyes on him. I also feel like the Dodgers will kind of let his personality shine a lot more. Like Red Sox fans watch Mookie Betts go to LA and then become an entirely different person, right? Like he has his own podcast now. He's one of the most like he's going to the World Series as like a representative for the players. Like the Dodgers let him do whatever he wanted with his personality. And the Angels are like one of the most reserved franchises for making their players do media. Like, it's what people have said about Mike Trout for years. And, Shohei obviously is very different because like I don't know how much English he speaks, if much at all, but like, I feel like over time, we're going to see him become a lot more comfortable there, and we're going to see a very different Shohei Ohtani personally.
Yeah, for sure. And I think part of that naturally happens when you have your long-term fit, both financially and just you're there for 10 years. Like, I don't know, there might be a note. I don't know if there's a no trade clause or anything, but he's probably not going to be traded from the Dodgers. So like he knows he's going to be there for a while. So there's that commitment element to it. And yeah, regarding also what this means for Shohei, I think there might be there's like a little bit of an answer, and I don't know how accurate the answer is, but a little bit of an answer to like how valuable is Shohei Ohtani, because we talk about it every MVP round, like was, obviously he was the most valuable player of 2023 and 2022 or 2021 rather. But like there was a big debate in 2022. Some people were overwhelmingly on Shohei Ohtani's side, saying that was, he was way more valuable than Aaron Judge that year. But like, I think when MVP rounds come up, maybe there's a thing of like, well, he's doing what he normally does, and what he normally does is valued at $70 million a year. So
Yeah. So
there is that.
there it is.
There is that element to it. So, financially, he's obviously the most valuable player. When he does both hitting and pitching, he is the most valuable player typically, unless someone has a 211 OPS plus and steals 16 bases and plays very good defense. But yeah, I think that adds another element into like the argument of seeing exactly how valuable Shohei Ohtani is, because sometimes wins above replacement doesn't answer that. Sometimes, the numbers don't answer that, but the market just answered that a little bit.
No, it absolutely did. Yeah, I mean, it's good that like, all the big questions we had about Shohei, about like, how do you value this and how do you evaluate something like this? I feel like those are almost past us now, and now, you know, the questions with Shohei Ohtani become like, okay, how does he perform on the big stage? How does he perform in the playoffs? And I mean, I feel like we saw it in the World Baseball Classic already, right? Like, I mean, Japan pretty much treated that like the World Series. Some would even say like it's bigger than the World Series, at least for Japan, clearly. I mean, I feel like all those players would have taken the WBC over like the NPB championship, right?
Yeah.
Um, and he was the tournament MVP. And he performed well in every round. Of course, he famously came out of the bullpen in the championship game. Uh, and I mean, we get to see that now at the more local, just MLB level. Whenever he does get to the playoffs.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, and I mean, it's cool to see. One thing that like you don't really see often in baseball is like other athletes coming out to like shine a light on baseball players. Like a lot of guys from other sports like came out to talk about this signing. Like Patrick Mahomes, like was like mind blown over his contract. JJ Watt like retweet like responded being like, you got to start learning pass rush moves because clearly you can be making twice as much. Um, like Kevin Durant commented on his post with like a hype emoji, like with the hands up, this thing, right? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why I say like this is just why we both say this is good for baseball
Mm-hmm.
is like, I mean, I remember even when, Trout or like Harper Machado contracts were coming out, there were like athletes that were commenting like, wow, gotta learn baseball. Like this is obviously a lucrative sport. And it does
Mm-hmm.
remind you, like, if a guy is getting paid $70 million a year, this sport is not dying. It's not going
Yeah.
away anytime
No.
soon. People
No.
are watching. People are buying tickets every day to watch this game. People
Mm-hmm.
are getting, their MLB TV packages and their cable packages in order to watch this game. Otherwise, otherwise, there would not be a team that thought it was a good idea to spend $70 million a year on a player.
I also think
So
this is.
yeah,
I also just think it's so great that like baseball has something that no other sport can say it has, right? Like there's nothing in basketball specifically. I don't think there's an equivalent to this. Like how like maybe like Hall of Fame coach plus Hall of Fame player. That's the closest thing I could think of. In football, it's like, what if Patrick Mahomes was like also an all-star, cornerback or a Pro Bowl quarterback cornerback.
yeah,
In hockey, it's maybe like yeah, in hockey it can't really be anything unless it was like a guy that played goalie, but then also from time to time played, played offense, right?
Yeah,
But even
exactly.
then, it's like you can't do those at the same time. You have to pick one or the other. And Shohei does both in the same game at times. Like this is baseball has something that you can't explain really in any other sports terms except for maybe football.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But even then, I
It's
feel like it would be kind of frowned upon in football because there's so much speculation with, health and like, player safety. And it's like, oh, do you really want to be putting someone out there for the entire game? Probably not.
yeah, no, it would be impossible. You can't have
And if
yeah,
they get hurt, that's a PR nightmare
yeah, you can't have
for the NFL.
Jalen Hurts going out there playing middle linebacker, trying to
Yeah.
tackle guys
Hmm.
after taking a big hit near the sideline, well, after scrambling. Like it's just not gonna be able to happen
Yeah.
physically. Um,
Not only that, but I mean, I think this is going to, uh, it's going to bring a youth movement back to baseball, right? Like people are going to watch Shohei Ohtani doing both, and then making their own attempts to do both. I mean, I as someone who covered some college baseball this summer, like I can tell you, it's already happening in college baseball. Like it's not unusual that there are guys that come into college and are able to be a pitcher and a hitter, but every now and then you're seeing guys that are capable of doing both. I recently did a mock draft for the 2024 MLB draft, and two of my top like 13 picks uh, are two-way players that like are capable of doing both to success in college. And I think three of my top 30 picks were college guys that are two-way players. Like you're gonna start seeing it. It's never gonna be to Shohei Ohtani's level, at least for a very long time. But like this is gonna start a movement.
yeah, because I mean, it already proves to be, a valuable option, but it's also a lucrative option just
Hmm.
financially. If you can,
Yeah.
the guy who's doing it just got $700 million. Um, so yeah, like I forgot the point I was gonna say, um, but yeah, and oh god, I
All
lost it. God.
right. Yeah, and I mean, like, anecdotally, like, this is going to accelerate that process of Shohei Ohtani becoming this, this public figure, so to speak. He obviously has already been so. I mean, he's has 6 million followers, and he hasn't played a game for the Dodgers yet. But like, any sort of, everything is going to be accelerated with him going to the Dodgers, basically.
Yeah, the point I was gonna make was it's also just, yeah, I think you've kind of prefaced this before in the episode, but it's lucrative for a team. Like the amount of Ohtani jerseys that are going to be sold, it's
Hmm.
going to be the highest selling jersey this year, most likely. And like I imagine, when he comes back to the mound, tickets are going to be hot for the Ohtani days when he's pitching, because
Have you seen the tickets or the prices of Dodgers tickets, like, and how much they've gone up in the last 2 days?
I have not. No.
I think the cheapest ticket available on opening day at Dodger Stadium is like $350.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like,
So so yeah,
yeah, I mean, Dodger dogs are going to be $1 million, unfortunately, but I
yeah,
mean,
any team is gonna benefit. That you're gonna see some of that $700 million coming back to you in jersey sales, ticket sales, cable subscriptions. Like I'm sure there's definitely some people out there who weren't gonna watch the Dodgers in LA, but now that the
yep.
best player and most unique player in baseball has come to their team, now they're gonna watch. Which is a very cool thing to happen. And that would have happened with any fan base. If you went to
Hmm.
the Cardinals or the Cubs or the Blue Jays, there were just going to be more people watching that team. Particularly because I imagine, I don't know personally, but I feel like it might be a situation where some people might just root for Shohei Ohtani and not necessarily a team.
How
Um,
many people do you think did that with the Angels over the last 6 years?
exactly. Yeah. So I feel like that whole thing will happen because he's just that special. Um, yeah. Anything more to add?
I mean, are we done talking about the Shohei aspect of it? Because I feel like we should eulogize the Angels.
Yeah, we could go ahead and do that for sure.
Yeah. It's very weird. Like, it's very weird to think that the Angels are just gonna come back and start playing again next year. Like it almost feels like this is like the true death of a franchise. Like the way that we're supposed to be feeling about the Oakland A's right now is like kind of how I feel about the Angels, which is weird because Mike Trout's playing baseball next year, right? Like,
Yep.
I'm gonna put down a player to watch for the Angels next year, and I'm gonna try to commit to watching them when I can because that's what I do every year with every team. Uh, but like everything that people said about them over the last 4 or 5 years, it manifested the way everyone predicted it would, and um, it's a real shame that Artie Moreno decommitted to selling the team because you know this was preventable. The like one thing that I think people learn with free agency is that extensions are cheaper. Like if Shohei didn't know that $700 million was going to be on the table, he probably would have taken a $500 million deal from the Angels, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, like the good example was Xander Bogaerts last season, right? Like the Red Sox, didn't really feel like making a big effort to extend him, and instead they were like, all right, we'll try our luck in free agency. And then the Padres offered, $280 million, which was an offer that you can't even blame the Red Sox for not trying to match. In this case, I don't think any Angels fans are being like, really, you couldn't match $700 million. But the point is, no, you could have gotten him for cheaper if there was more of an effort made.
Yeah.
Um, Especially like, and they even kind of had an opportunity to do so at maybe a cheaper cost. Imagine, and we'll never know what happens, but you know, it feels like they could have capitalized uh on several moments throughout this process, and they just never, it just never happened.
Yeah, because excuse me, but they knew what he was, and they knew what he looked like in 2021, 2 years before free agency was about to hit. So pretty much ever since he won that first MVP, there was always anticipation of what that free agency was going to look like. But yeah, Angels could have gotten in the way, and we don't know for sure like what Ohtani's mindset was or what Ohtani's agency's mindset was, because I think they I think all parties sort of knew what the potential was with free agency if he was able to keep up that performance, which he ended up doing. And now look at him, and now potentially 200-300 million dollars richer because of that, than he would have been. So yeah, it you wonder what the aspects of it. I'm sure more reports are going to come out from an Angels perspective, about what that all looked like. But I guess organizationally, keeping him around, it would have been good. It would have helped the team out tremendously. But we already know what the team looks like with him. It was not they never went to the postseason, and that wasn't to the fault of Ohtani, obviously. So
And they never even had a winning record.
never even had a winning record. So I get it's time to rebuild, and it's time for just an organizational teardown in some sense.
It should be. Mike Trout is 100% staying, according to Artie Moreno. And so be it. That is what it is at this point. But it's going to be very weird to see them. They're going to come into spring training next year, and like there's going to be a narrative around the team. Like Mike Trout is going to be asked the same question in spring training on opening day, on June 14th, on September 21st, when they're mathematically eliminated. It's going to be, how is Shohei's absence gonna affect this season? How is Shohei's absence affecting this season? How did Shohei's absence affect this season? Right? That's gonna be what people care about with the Angels this year, whether they like it or not. And I mean, I feel like it's warranted towards Artie Moreno because he's one of the most hands-on owners in baseball, and I mean, he hires people to actually oversee baseball operations, but then he kind of tries to do their jobs for them, and this is the result of that.
Right, right. And there's speculation about why Shohei chose, um the team he chose. And obviously I imagine that the Dodgers made the highest offer. It would be funny though if there was a report saying that the Blue Jays offered like $800 million, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, probably the highest offer. But I think there was a value for Ohtani in being on a winning team. He's obviously a big competitor. He obviously has a high standard for himself, as just exemplified by his play. So I think he would have a high standard for the team he was going to go to in free agency. So I wonder if maybe when extension talks, if any extension talks were had, that maybe
they
he
had to
held
have
that a
been.
little bit against the Angels, because he was with the Angels, he was succeeding with the Angels, but the Angels weren't succeeding with him. So maybe that was held against the Angels a little bit, and why he wasn't, as open to maybe extending with the team or talking to them in free agency. And obviously the Angels weren't ever like in the ballpark in free agency, but nonetheless, like, I think Ohtani partially just wanted to be out there and win, and he's probably going to be winning for the next 10 years now.
Yeah. One of the reports that came out said that Shohei, in the meetings with all the teams that he met with, asked about their farm system and how they're, investing in the futures of their franchises outside of him. And how do the Angels answer to that? I mean, they've had years to answer for it, and they just haven't, actually done it physically. How are you supposed to be like, no, 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 I understand that these last 6 years have been bad, but the next 10, you got to trust us. This is when it's going to happen, right? Because they already have one of the worst farm systems in baseball. They traded away the few talented prospects they had for Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez, and that didn't work out. How are the Angels supposed to answer to that question, especially in comparison to how the Dodgers probably answered it with one of the top farm systems in the league?
Yeah, it's hilarious to look at it, seeing the Angels, who haven't been really close to the playoffs in the
But it's
past.
also never been bad enough to like rebuild, weirdly
Yeah,
enough. Because like if you go on Fangraphs right now and you look at their projected lineup on opening day, like you can talk yourself into it if you really try hard enough. You really can.
yeah, maybe.
Like I'll just
Well,
like
I know you definitely can.
but like just hear me out though. Like Luis Rengifo leadoff. Okay, that's probably the worst bat in the lineup, ironically, although he's hitting leadoff. Mike Trout goes without saying, right? Brandon Drury did very well last year. Taylor Ward, remember 2022? Anthony Rendon. Okay, I think we're out on him, but the potential was always there. Mickey Moniak probably won't perform the way he did last year, but he could be a good enough bat in that lineup. Logan O'Hoppe looked very good in the few games he played last year. Nolan Shonowell had a 402 OBP, just getting into professional baseball. Zach Neto looked all right last year. Like it's enough to where I think people will be delusional enough to throw their hat in, because I was for 3-4 years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely like, I could definitely see some guys succeeding in there, but you're taking, it's a numbers game. Like,
It is.
three of them will do pretty well, and then like maybe the rest will not perform to their ceiling. But regardless, like, looking at the Angels, it's just funny to think about them and the Dodgers. Like, the Angels haven't really gotten close to the playoffs the past few years, and are sitting in a position where, they're probably projected to win, I don't know, 65 at most, maybe 70 games next year. And they have what Fangraphs has as the worst farm system in baseball. Meanwhile, the Dodgers have made the playoffs 11 years in a row now, haven't really had any high draft picks since like 05, 06 or something like that. And they have the sixth highest ranked farm system in baseball, while also having, like, they've traded for Mookie Betts before. Like, they've traded prospect capital
I
for
guess
that.
I guess to be fair, like all of the guys that would be top prospects in the Angels system are just already in the major leagues.
That is
Like so,
true.
like most teams would have Zach Neto in their farm system, but the Angels already called him up. I think
Yeah.
Nolan Shonowell is still a rookie, because I don't know if he surpassed the number of plate appearances, but like that, I guess that has something to do with it as well. But
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of does go to show, you know, what it's like to play in their minor league system if they rush all their prospects the way that they do.
Yeah. Normal organization. Like, I feel like Reed Detmers would have made his debut like late 2022 or even last year for most organizations.
Yeah.
But yeah, it there. I know the article's like over 3 years old now, but there was a big article, or maybe 2 years old now.
June Lee, right?
June Lee, yeah, I think about just, I think it was about general poor minor league treatment, but the Angels were the big example that they pointed to.
They were singled out.
They were singled out for sure, and it's reflected in not only their prospect rankings, but their major league performance, because it obviously carries over.
Yeah, I mean, and also like with the Dodgers, you talk about, smart investing, right? And they make the right moves and they make the moves when they need to. Go back and look at all the Angels free agent signings over the last 5 years, right? Like, you can even go beyond that. How much money did they give combined to like Albert Pujols, Justin Upton, Anthony Rendon, and everyone, like, and what did that give them?
Yeah, that's like 500 million alone.
Yeah.
Between all of them. Yeah, it is pretty.
I feel like I'm missing another one too. Tyler Anderson wasn't a good one last year.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm trying to, I have names going through my head as well. I feel like there have just been some pitchers that have flopped, but I'm not thinking in the correct line. But nonetheless, yeah, like it's not like they are super cheap and are on like a Rays, Guardians, Athletics level of spending. It's just
Josh Hamilton too.
Yeah, okay.
That's the one I was thinking of, a little further back.
But yeah, it's not like they're on an extreme low level of payroll. It's just it's not really always going to the right people.
Yep.
So yeah, the Angels, we've talked extensively about them, but it's the cherry on top here, and it does, seeing Shohei not on that roster now officially, it just really puts an exclamation mark on some of the failures that they've had. Unfortunately, not something we really wanted to see, but it did indeed happen. So yeah, any more things to talk about here?
I don't know. I feel like that's most of the angles I wanted to cover.
Yeah,
I can't think of anything else.
yeah. I mean, not many players you can talk about for upwards of, I don't know, it's probably been 40 to 50 minutes here.
Yeah.
Not many players you can do that with, but as cliched as it is, he's that guy. I was looking it up before the show. Over the last 3 years, better OPS plus than Juan Soto, better ERA plus than Max Scherzer. And that's including Max Scherzer's 2021 and 2022, where he was an elite pitcher those years. Second best ERA plus out of 57, and fourth best OPS plus out of 226. That's who we're talking about here. That's why he got $700 million. It's why he's won 2 of the last 3 MVPs and is likely to win a few more when he does get back to pitching. And even
Who says we even have to wait? He could win it as a position player outright.
Yeah,
he had he had like the 4th highest position player F4 last year as a DH.
As a DH who ended his season a month early.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Had a 186 OPS plus or something like that. It was in the 180s for sure. Like that's crazy. That's unbelievable. So that's who we're talking about. Happy for the guy, happy for baseball. It's good for baseball. And we hope you enjoyed this one. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel where we have a lot of digital content. We have playlists. We have guest interviews, all chronological order. We have the baseball history series that we did back in 2020 and 2021. Go check all that out. And we have a playlist of bubble cases, which I think 5 or 6 of those players are still on the ballot. So check out why we think all the angles of Billy Wagner's Hall of Fame case, Todd Helton's Hall of Fame case, Andrew Jones's,
Bobby
Abreu's. Check out all that. We did those back in the winter of between 20 to 21 was that ballot. So check out that on the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. Follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter, @Echoes_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram @Daniel_Curran. And follow the show.
I realized we also did an Omar Vizquel one that you're gonna want to watch.
Oh yeah, that was the one we probably had the most fun with.
Yes.
That was a good time. That's when we were introduced to Rabbit Marinville.
Yep.
Shout out to the Hall of Famer Rabbit Marinville.
Yeah, noted Springfield, Mass alum.
Noted indeed.
Or native.
Follow the show Instagram @Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we are hopefully talking more free agent deals. We will see you then.
This conversation is over.